Greetings, and welcome back to the podcast. This episode, we're joined by Mr. Rene Amirault, CEO of Secure Energy Services, an energy company listed on the TSX with a market cap of approximately $2.3 billion. Mr. Amirault was appointed as the president and CEO of Secure in March of 2007, and from 2001 until 2006, Mr. Amirault was the vice president of corporate development of Tervita Corporation, formerly CCS Income Trust. Altogether, Mr. Amirault has over 25 years of experience in the energy industry and also held various positions at Imperial Oil from 1981 until 1994. Mr. Amirault received a Certified General Accounting designation in 1984. Among other things, we sat down and discussed 80% recurring cash flows, emphasizing the field, and why customer service matters. Enjoy. This podcast episode is sponsored by Conate Water Solutions. Do you need cost-effective water sourcing options to supply your next drilling or completions program? Conate Water Solutions is a specialized hydrogeology company focused on water well drilling, testing, and water management services in Western Canada and Texas. Contact info@conatewater.com or check out conatewater.com for more details. This episode is brought to you by Canada Action, whose aim is to promote the importance of Canada's energy industry, which is the bedrock of our nation's economy, providing hundreds of thousands of jobs and economic opportunities across the country. Learn more at canadaaction.ca or check out Canada Action on social media. This podcast episode is sponsored by EcoFlex Recycled Rubber Solutions. EcoFlex has been providing the oil and gas industry with matting and safety walkways for 30 years, with mats that are resilient, flexible, and an eco-friendly option for your toughest site conditions. With shock absorption, insulation, and easy maintenance, EcoFlex mats are the perfect choice for any job. Check out ecoflex.com for more details. Good morning, Mr. Rene. Maybe we'll just say Rene?
Yeah, just say Rene. Everybody knows me as Rene.
Thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, great.
I know it's valuable, but there are a lot of people out there that will appreciate this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
I guess before we start, for the listener, there are no scripted questions in this conversation. Sometimes people in your position like to script everything out, but in this case, it seems like the best CEOs don't do that. So just for a little background for the listener, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
In that sense.
That's great.
You're the CEO of Secure Energy Services, but what is Secure Energy Services?
That's a good question. You know, we've evolved since we first started. We got started back in 2007. And I think at that time we looked at our value chain being involved from the time people think about drilling a well to the final abandonment. And so looked right across the value chain, said, okay, where can we add value? And so that took Secure from, helping the consulting of actually where they would drill, the well. We have like drilling consultants that help with the environmental side. We acquired a drilling fluids company, Marquee Alliance. We got involved in the frack waters, the pumping and the frack ponds, and then into the day-to-day production of water and oil emulsions and the associated waste. And then finally, we did a small acquisition in regards to the whole reclamation remediation. And so that covered a wide spectrum, and taking us from 2007 to 2014, all services required, we're coming up with innovative solutions. And then 2015 hits and it's like, oh shit, like we're going from 800 rigs down to 200 rigs and a reset on your commodity prices. And we just took a time out at our strategy session, said, okay, where can we truly add value as opposed to trying to do everything? What can we really, really add value for the customer? And so over the years, we've shrunk the different service offerings and really focused on A, can we truly add value and differentiate ourselves with the customer, but also B, is there truly free cash flow? And at the end of the day, because revenue's nice, EBITDA is even nice, but what's left in the bank account at the end of the year? And so that obsession with free cash flow, I think, started back in 2016. At the time, Alan Granch was our CFO. I think helped formulate that from now on, we're going to focus on any new organic growth was going to be backstopped by a customer. So that would obviously help with the cash flow profile, but also take some of that risk and variable cash flow, make it a lot more stable. And so that's how we've kind of evolved here to really it's an environmental waste management company and it's energy infrastructure. We still do some of the things like drilling fluids because it's a great free cash flow business. But if you look at the majority of our cash flow, it's coming from the environmental waste management, which would be around 70%. The energy infrastructure, so your pipelines and terminals, is about 20%. And then the other, what we'd call the oil field services are about 10%.
How did you get into energy? I think you're an accountant by training.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So I got hired right out of college by Imperial Oil. And at that time, head office in 1981 was in Edmonton. All my friends were in Calgary. So I used to come down quite a bit on the weekends, Friday afternoon to Sunday night and go back to Edmonton. But we had a great entrepreneurial culture in Imperial Oil at the time. For a big company, it was the company that discovered Leduc and took a lot of bold entrepreneurial ideas and executed and they were the leader across Canada. And the CEOs at that time were very entrepreneurial. They were all Canadian and most of them were from the prairies. Very, very successful. And after about a year in accounting, I told my boss that I need to get to the field. I need to add value. I need to be working on something that's proactive versus reactive. And, so he said, all right, we'll send you to the Beaufort, Tuktoyaktuk. So I was working 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out of the Beaufort, loved the job. I mean, basically here I am, second year with Imperial Oil and they're just basically handing me the keys at Tuck Base to help manage this Beaufort farm out agreement with Home Oil. And, it's the, really logistics hub to get all your supplies and people out to the rigs and drill these at that time, $50-70 million wells offshore, and very exciting and loved it. Great thing was you'd go up there for 2 weeks. You'd spend no money and then you'd go out for 2 weeks. And lo and behold, I was at the time trying to finish my CGA. So, I wasn't spending a whole lot of money, when I came out. So I had more money in the bank than I thought I'd ever need. And so, it was a great 2 years. And then, as that started to wind down back then, if anyone remembers, they had the PIP grants and that started to wind down. So the incentives weren't there. And then I went on to a new project, which was the Judy Creek municipal flood. And from there, they were taking an old field and introducing these solvents to get more oil out of the ground, which was again pretty groundbreaking in terms of what they were doing. A lot of it was pipeline from Edmonton and injected and recovered. And again, it was a unbelievable project. Lots of things to learn about old production versus new production. And to this day, it's still going. It's, you'd think a field that's 50, 60 years old would have nothing left in it, but it's still going. And that's the magic of this energy industry, is that it just has a way of rejuvenating itself and keeping either these old fields going, or now trying, obviously, with the new horizontal techniques, going into brand new parts of the reservoir that nobody even thought we could go into. So really, that's how I got into the energy industry, and then wanted to get into the downstream side of the business. And so I was able to go into the downstream around the refinery and you had your bulk agents and you had your fertilizers and chemicals. So that was exciting. But after about 5 years in the downstream, missed the lure of the upstream. and wanted to come back. And then that ultimately took me in a roundabout way to a little tiny company called Canadian Crude Separators.
Did you ever cross paths with Chip Wilson up north? I read that he was on the rigs in the 80s.
Oh, no, I didn't. No,
Okay.
didn't hear that one. I mean, there was a lot of characters up there in the north, and Arnie LaCroix was one. He was former truck driver, and he would have been a 300-pound linebacker in the NFL. That kind of foreman, but fearless. And when Arnie talked, you listened.
When I was preparing for this conversation, I read in your bio that you at one point referred to yourself as an independent businessman. I've always kind of admired that trait and always aspired to be maybe that sort of private investor. Maybe have you always had that independent streak in you?
Yeah, I think it comes from my grandfather. He had a fish processing plant in Nova Scotia. He used to export his fish, if you can believe this, down to the Caribbean. He used to tell me stories, crazy stories, pre-revolution, going to Cuba and places like that. And so I think those kind of stories when I was young always maybe planted a seed or a bug in the back of my brain that someday I could be an entrepreneur. And I remember when I went to college, your last semester, you do a project where you try to create a business on paper. So you don't actually, again, that just rejuvenated the juices to say that someday I need to start something. But it's funny, I spent 13 years with Imperial Oil, and I kept saying, well, and I'm going to be here for 5 years and then I'm going to start something. And to give credit to Imperial Oil and that entrepreneurial environment and a great culture, it wasn't until year 13 I said, all right, I got to move on. But they basically had their hooks in me for 13 years because it was a great place to work. So that's always, I think, been there. And I was looking around to what I wanted to go next. It was definitely going to be small, but I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to get into when I left Imperial Oil.
Sometimes life at the big company is too good almost, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's hard to leave.
Like what's the saying, good is the enemy of great, because, if it was really bad, I'd leave. But if it's good, everybody's happy, right?
Sometimes lucky ones get fired.
Yeah.
To go back a little bit, you've been the CEO, if I'm correct, of Secure for roughly 16 years.
Yeah, it was about March of 2007. Some individuals got together. At the time, I'd taken a year off between Canadian Crude Separators. Now, name got changed to Tervita, and did some traveling, got on some boards, and was trying to figure out what to do next. And some of my old employees, Dan Stanke and Gord Getzinger and Kara Meerheim, were trying to start this small company. And Dan actually named it, Secure Energy Services. And when they came to me, I said, Dan, if we're going to do this, if you want me to join and put my money in, we've got to do it right. And we just can't. I think his idea at the time was, you'd have this small little group and shareholders agreement and we'd do one project every couple of years. And I said, no, if we're going to do it, we have to do it right. And we're going to have to get external shareholders. And I think, that was scary for them because, well, are we going to get lost in the shuffle here? And a couple other individuals, Nick Wheeler and Gary Pera, came on. Nick had a CFA background, but he had helped me with business development at Tervita. And, I think between all of us, we started to formulate that plan that, okay, if we're going to do this, let's do it right and actually go out and raise some money.
Why do you think you lasted so long? Sometimes, even though you're a good CEO, things can happen under your control where maybe an activist shareholder takes over or the board of directors stabs you in the back and you don't last. How come you think you lasted?
I think when you put essentially 95% of your net worth into a company like this and then all that sweat equity, you get to see the thing blossom. You're given 150% every day. And so I knew from my other experiences at Tervita and even watching people at Imperial Oil that were successful, that if you surround yourself with great people, you can accomplish great things. And so I knew as long as we were accomplishing great things, I wouldn't have either my board or an activist looking over my shoulder. And two, I was very careful, especially in those early years, not to call it go after the easy money. And next thing you know, you have a 50% shareholder that could get more short-term thinking versus long-term. So we always talked about the long-term. We always talked about what's right, not for the quarter, but how are we going to create shareholder value over 1, 2, 5 years? And so I think that helped. And, but definitely shortly after we even started with the original founders, there was 3 key people. This is where you ultimately, you know, when you first meet them that they're good people, but I mean, these are great leaders. And that was Alan Granch, Corey Hyam, and Dave Engel. Like that really took it to the next level. It's like getting 3 first-round draft choices, you know, in the NHL, and you know they have so much potential. I'm trying to steer the ship, knowing full well that I've got a first line, second line, third line, fourth line, but they're really all first and second liners.
Usually I ask if you had to put your own money in the company to create a symmetry of risk with the shareholders, but in this case, it just already came out. So
it was just all in.
We've already established that.
And the nice part was, like, I know all of them, every name I just mentioned. They not only took their savings, but they actually took mortgages out on their homes to put money in because they could see the potential, but they also had that, you know, owner mentality that, hey, I want to share the upside.
Were you aware of the importance of that, or was it just implicit?
You know, I'm a big believer in share ownership, and there's 2 things I wanted them to do. One was put as much money as you feel comfortable with, and, you know, don't ever push yourselves into an uncomfortable risk position. And part B is I tried and convinced my board, let's load these people up with options. Because if again, that's another way to get shares. If we do good, those shares, those options are worth something. If we don't do good, they're worth 0.
To get back to Secure, to get it right from the source, what makes a good energy service company to you? Is it expanding the franchise? Is it straight throughput? Is it a diverse service offering? Is it relationships with the customers? Maybe all of the above?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. And I think as a organization evolves and as your leaders involved, you're always fine tuning those corners. But I think, we always try to be best in class. So whatever we're going to do, let's be above average, be best in class. I think definitely after 2016, we started thinking more about critical infrastructure. And that certainly, played into trying to get, for instance, trucks off the road and pipelining water and oil to your location, as opposed to the ups and downs. Very much, you know, even right from day one, we had oil and gas company employees supporting us in terms of, look, we really want a great competitor from a service point of view, not necessarily to bring the prices down dramatically. It was more of our trucks are lining up. We can't get into a facility. We just need some really good service here. And that was, you know, a big part of our, we always had that environment, you know, minimize the environmental impact. I think that was kind of in our DNA because, you know, you're dealing with waste products and byproducts and ultimately into that remediation and whatnot and reducing the environment. So, you know, when this whole ESG thing really took off, it was like, okay, we've been kind of doing that for a long, long time. So that wasn't really a hard push. It was just like, yeah, let's just tell everybody what we're doing. You know, it was more. And then, you know, I think, we've always been field, you know, centric in terms of we've always had that attitude. The money is won or lost in the field. So we always looked at, you know, including myself, as overhead and resources supporting the field as opposed to the other way around. And I think anytime we went out to the field, you could just see their energy and ownership because of it, because they knew we weren't there to check boxes or give them shit for something. It was, hey, what's working, what's not? What are your challenges? Is there anything we can do to help? And if you go into that kind of attitude at that field level, your employees are just 6 feet off the ground.
You actually care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Levi Strauss made a fortune in the late 1800s servicing the gold rush. He didn't actually look for gold. He thought it was better to service the gold panners. We viewed Secure in that sense, and that maybe there's a lot of opportunity in the midstream, maybe servicing the people looking for the gold, so to speak.
Oh, for sure. But I think it's evolved now into more of this, how do you make a win-win solution for your partner? And I think the oil and gas company now is thinking the same thing. I'll give you an example. We're one of the first infrastructure players that said, you know what, we think we can A, reduce your costs, but B, maybe share some of the upside in terms of optimizing, blending your crude oils. But you know what, we're not going to take all that. It's going to be an open book, and we're going to split that with you. And depending on how much capital you want to put in, we'll, kind of drive that formula. But at the end of the day, you're not hiding anything. You're showing your partner there's some extra money to be made here. Let's work together. And that's a win-win. And so I really tried to find different innovative ways to do that. And guess what? That partner then says, well, you helped us over here. Can you help us over there? Can you help us over here? And that's been a big part of, I think, of our value proposition these days is that, hey, let's try to make it a win-win.
Not tit for tat, or maybe tit for tat in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you explain that to shareholders in this? It's kind of intangible in the fact that you treat your business partners right. I guess it just shows up in the results over time. How do you explain that?
Yeah. I mean, I had a conference call with some New York investors this morning, and some in a roundabout way, they're asking some of the similar questions, and I just said, look, at the end of the day, it's all about cash flow per share. And where the rubber hits the road is we've invested X amount of capital. What are the returns on that? And so if you can consistently show better and better returns, if you consistently show your cash flow per share is going up for the shareholder, then they get excited. Then they start believing in that, okay, whatever he's doing there, that's working. It's working. It's obviously working for the customer because you keep growing, and part B is you're making more money. So I think that's ultimately how they measure you.
Sometimes energy services are a proxy for the industry. When the tide goes up, so does the service end of the business. But when it goes down, it also falls. How do you structure Secure so that it maybe is resilient to the ups and downs, and you can hopefully provide that steady cash flow? Have you thought of it that way?
Oh yeah. Like you go through when you get punched in the gut in 2015, 16, and you get punched in the gut in 2020, you are laser focused on how do I eliminate this pain, not only for the shareholders, but the employees. Because, let's face it, laying off people is not a pleasant task. And so, again, if you look back to that pivotal point in 16 where the leadership team said, okay, let's try to get some long-term contracts. So that helps with the stability of the cash flow. 2 is let's really focus on reoccurring revenue. So if you think about the world we live in that oil field services, and nothing against the Precisions and the Tricans of the world, but you're living on the drilling of a well and the completion of the well. But there's a lot of things that need to be done to produce that barrel, that barrel of oil, that natural gas liquids, the natural gas, and all that associated with it. So we're probably now at a ratio where 80% of our cash flow is reoccurring and 20% would be more cyclical. And so that gets us to a point where if we have a little bit of a slowdown and oil suddenly drops to $50, we can ride that through. So that's the foundation. Part B of that is we have a very proactive leadership team that ensures that we're not overstaffing or we're not over-resourcing. So try to also stay lean so that when you do have those tough times, you can minimize any type of downsizing.
The critical investor would say, I've heard this before, and that I've seen this story play out before, but it seems like there are opportunities for the company to create the recurring revenue nowadays that maybe have been capitalized, or just a change in philosophy from the company. Have you had to explain that to shareholders again, maybe from the East?
Oh yeah. And again, you're only good as your last, financial statement, right? So you can't have high volatility in your earnings and say, hey, no, it's all reoccurring.
Yeah.
So I mean, the magic of that merger with Tervita was that, they had a plant running at 40% utilization. We had a plant running at 40% utilization. We both weren't getting an acceptable return on investment post merger. Now you're running one facility at 80% utilization. And so part of that is higher utilization of your assets. And part of it is, they had some business units that had more reoccurring revenue, i.e. the metal recycling and some of the industrial waste. That all helped bring that reoccurring number up.
Mm-hmm. In terms of opportunity for Secure, that would obviously be where the company is aiming to go, or where do you see as the Greenfield, so to speak, for the company? Is it in that recurring revenue side of the business, or what are you looking towards?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about where we can grow, I mean, the amount of water that needs to be handled these days is growing. Clearwater is a great example where we just started up some gathering lines in a terminal. That's gone from 0 to 35,000 barrels a day. We've got a gentleman that started this business, sold it to Tervita. We convinced him to come back a couple of years ago, the plant on the metal recycling side. I mean, this guy is an unbelievable leader. He's taken a mediocre operation and took it from a 3 to a 9.5 out of 10. And he's got all kinds of organic and acquisition opportunities there. We really like the industrial waste side of the business. So there's a lot of different avenues we can do, both organically and through acquisitions.
Critic would say the midstream sector, on one hand, the assets are so valuable because you can't get anything built. But on the other hand, there's no greenfield. But in the case of Secure, it sounds like maybe there's some different avenues you can go down to reassure the investor.
Yeah. I mean, again, we have a great team that has the ability to go to those local neighbors. We have probably over 25 different Aboriginal partnerships. So when we go into those communities, it's, hey, we want to build, and Clearwater is a good example. We went in there and worked with the local communities on why we were building, what we were trying to do. We're trying to take trucks off the road, which is more safe. And we're able to get those permits and construct on a timely basis. So you're absolutely right. It is getting tougher and tougher to build Greenfield, but I think the more upfront effort you put in place, the higher degree of success you can get. And there's nothing worse for someone in that community to at the last minute say, oh, by the way, we're building this and we just need you to sign this paper. Like, that is the worst thing you can do, trying to get your approval.
Stakeholders.
Yeah.
On the other hand, do you need Greenfield? Everyone says you need to grow, but maybe you don't. Maybe
I like to use the word brownfield expansion. So we've done a lot of that over the last couple of years, where you have your existing infrastructure and you add another disposal well, you add another treater, you add some gathering lines. We've got that K-Bob system where I can see as that Fox Creek area evolves, we're going to need, some more tie-ins out there. So you're absolutely right. I think, there's going to be some nice opportunities like a Nipissing where it's brand new, but we have this great network where you can just add to your existing infrastructure, more brownfield expansion.
The other catch to that is it's a physical asset that requires capital to grow. Is there a tension between growing with cash and issuing shares / debt? How do you manage that? Maybe in the case of someone like Phil Hodge at Pine Cliff, you pay cash on your recent deal.
Yeah.
Do you aspire to that?
Yeah. I mean, believe me, from 2007 to 2015, we issued a lot of shares because we were growing so quick, so fast. Since then, we've done a great job of A, not issuing shares and B, actually buying back shares. Like we bought back over $150 million of shares in 23, a little bit, and got kicked in December 15th of last year. And we'll renew that NCIB again. So the great thing about this business is our debt. When we merged, we were a debt to EBITDA ratio of 3.5. Today we're at 1.9. So that's a comfortable, range. We like to be in that 2 to 2.5 range. So my board and my team is comfortable with that. And then you look at our free cash flow after not only, your sustaining capital, but your growth capital and your dividends. There's money left over there. So you can either buy back shares, you can pay down debt, or do an acquisition. And I think in today's environment, you're trying to not only minimize issuing shares, but also if you can buy back shares. I mean, one investor said to me last week, he said, your top line cash flow keeps going up and your amount of shares keep going down. That's good. That's good. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
How do you view capital allocation nowadays? The trend is kind of gone in that direction in energy, although it's probably just a good way to run a business in general. Do you have a preference between buybacks versus dividends, or does it depend, or how are you viewing it, the evolution of the business?
Yeah, and that's a great question because we have these potential divestitures coming up that everyone's laser focused on. And so if you talk to anyone on my team, we just look at it as 4 levers. And so we've got these levers where we can buy back shares. We think we're undervalued. So that's probably got a little bit more of a weight there. 2, you can obviously, part of that can be upping your dividend. We just talked about the debt. So, I mean, that's always, you can pay down your revolver short term, but I think we're in a pretty good spot there. And then you got this organic and acquisition levers. So depending on what you want to do with your dividend or debt, you've kind of got 4 or 5 levers that you have to optimize. And if I knew my exact share price February 15th, I'd tell you, well, we're going to do this, but you don't. So you're always kind of looking, what's your valuation? Are you undervalued? Are you overvalued? Are there some really, really great projects we want to put some capital in? Are there some really, really great acquisitions that we think we can get a great return? So all those levers, it's fluid in the sense that you just don't know all those variables at any given time.
Mom and pop likes to see the dividend maybe on a monthly basis, or some of the portfolio managers out east, like, the special on their income statement. That's one aspect of the consideration, but ultimately the shareholders are the ones that, and you're a huge shareholder, are the ones that you're working for, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is there tension there between?
No, because I think we truly believe, and it's in our investor deck I know sometimes, we talked about 70% of our cash flow comes from environmental waste management. Well, if you look at the environmental waste management companies, the GFLs, the Waste Connections, the Waste Management Republics, they're typically a 1.5% to 2% yield, and we're at 5% right now. So we're not getting a whole lot of pressure there. And I think internally we're saying, you know what, that's a pretty good dividend. And as we go up, that yield will come down. And again, as long as we're in this undervalued position, you want to actually take every penny and put it towards the buyback of shares and balancing all those 3 or 4 other things versus a dividend.
What are you seeing nowadays in terms of the energy services being a proxy for the industry? Is it good times? Is it wait and see, or is it?
It's Goldilocks, man. It's Goldilocks because, and I say this all the time, is that if someone said tomorrow we're going to double the rigs and completions and it would just be hell out there. Like wages would go up and we'd be losing people to the rigs. And here you've got this disciplined Goldilocks era where, production's growing 2, 3, 4, 5%. And, we're able to get the right people and good quality people. Safety is a huge part of our lives and focus. And obviously if you can get better people, that's great from a operations point of view, but also huge from a safety point of view. And so, and that's all aspects of our industry, whether you're on the rigs or the frac units or in our plants. So, and then part B of this is, and this is more on the world macro, is I don't want the world to stall or go into a recession. So $100 oil would not be good for us, $10 gas would not be good for us in North America. So we're in this Goldilocks era right now where I think the price of oil is at a more reasonable level, and it's good for the consumer and it's good for the producer.
In the old days, it used to be kind of a roller coaster where that's, I guess, one of the reasons why people love the shares is that you can make a fortune overnight in the energy industry. Nowadays, it's maybe a bit slower in the share price appreciation, but maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah. I think my shareholders, and a lot of them are now more generous. There's very few resource funds or energy funds left, right? So you're dealing with a generalist that might have a 10% energy weighting. And so what does that generalist want? He wants steady returns over the long term. So, I think that's where Secure is in a great position to offer that, and they get to see it from a track record point of view, and doubling the drilling revenue and then losing that drilling, revenue is not necessarily going to help my long-term multiple or valuation or the generalist. So I think Secure is in a good spot where we can, have that long-term sustainable return.
Secure is a relatively big company now. Sometimes when companies grow, the bureaucratic aspects slow the company down, where you hire too many people, it becomes bureaucratic, or even worse, you start manufacturing drones. How do you prevent that at Secure to make sure it's lean and nimble?
Culture. I mean, we are obsessed with it. We talk about it. We even brought it up in our town hall. We do engagement surveys. We look for, where did we get rated high? Where did we get rated low? We have a town hall where there's no bad questions. People get the phone in or write in or whatever. They're anonymous. Open and transparent culture is so important. I think we, like any organization, when you have 2,200 employees, you're going to have some red tape. You're going to have some bureaucracy. But as long as, we keep saying, put your hand up and just hit that timeout button that, hey, this does not make sense, or, hey, why are we doing this? And the good news is all the way up to our board. I've got a chairman, Mick Dilger, who says, I don't need to see 400 pages in this board book. If you're doing it for us, don't do it. Like, if you're doing it for yourselves, great. If that helps you manage the business. But so we've got a great culture at the board, great culture in the organization that is obsessed with reducing bureaucracy and red tape and do it because it adds value, as opposed to I'm checking a box.
Yeah. There's a fine line between employee annual reviews and, I guess you know it when you see it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember back to my Imperial Oil days, and you would get put into a bell curve, right?
Yeah.
You'd almost have to walk on water to get outside the bell curve. And so the person that's given 80% effort and I'm giving 120% effort, we're kind of getting the same rating, and okay, this does not feel good. So again, part of the culture is, how about we just give people feedback every day, every week, go out for coffee once a month. How's it going? How am I doing as a leader? Those kind of appraisals have ton more weight and more relevance and more timely and ultimately create better behavior.
Yeah. Or there is a room for HR, but sometimes the HR becomes more powerful than the executives themselves.
Yeah.
Which is not a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The benefits of industrial development. How much does Secure give back to the Canadian and Alberta economy on an annual basis just to stay flat? It's got to be a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, you're asking in terms of how do we impact the Alberta GDP and as well. I mean, there's two parts to that. I mean, obviously we employ 2,200 people, and definitely, when we do construct in Saskatchewan and British Columbia, so it's not just Alberta. Those are, for the most part, all either local labor, local contractors. You source your material where you can. I mean, obviously some of the valves are manufactured in Ontario or elsewhere, but we're very conscious of that. We're also we actually track in our sustainability report what our Aboriginal content is, for instance. So I think that's important too. And then, thirdly is giving back to the community. And so I've always tried to make it almost an employee fed, whether it's at the field level or at our corporate office. If you truly believe in a charity, whether it's time or money, we're there to support you. And so whether, obviously, something like the United Way is front and center, but we just kicked off Movember. We also have one in May around heart and stroke. And that's a lot of that's just employee led, and we just rally behind it. In the case of Movember, we've had two individuals, Greg Philipchuk and Gary Smith, that have some close personal feelings around that. And boy, you just want to put your arm around them and say, hey, we're here for you. How can I help? Last year we were number 2 in Canada for Movember.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's a lot of money.
Crazy.
But in terms of the operating costs of Secure, everything from salaries to property taxes and the facilities, maintenance costs, everything that goes along with that adds up into maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, $1 billion.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean,
every year.
Yeah, every year. I mean, I think just our salaries and labor is $200 million a year. They're big numbers. They're big numbers.
It's an underappreciated aspect of the business. Perhaps.
It is. And I think we now have a premier that better understands that. I think she has a great team. We've been invited to talk to her energy minister just on industry regulations and whatnot in terms of how can we reduce red tape? Imagine that. We're trying to help the government reduce red tape, So, hey, that's exciting when you're asked to, how can you reduce red tape?
Up to this point, what's been the favorite part of your career? The most stimulating or most enjoyable? Maybe right now.
You know what? Right from day one was just watching your people grow. That's definitely, you go to see a customer and they've dealt with one of your EVPs or even a plant foreman, and they go, wow, man, have you got a great team? Wow. I really like that guy. I really like her. She really helped me out. So that's been probably the most satisfying. I think too is anytime you can grow something from nothing into a company that has a great culture, that has a long-term future, that excites the hell out of me. And I'll tell you right now, if Rene gets hit by a bus tomorrow, this company doesn't meet a heartbeat. Like, this thing is designed, and we do it all the way down to the plant manager or drilling fluids or, metal recycling. We're always talking about succession planning and at the same time, I want them to have the chance to grow. Like, there's nothing worse in an organization where your younger people don't have a chance to grow. And in fact, that's how you lose them if you don't give them that chance to grow. So just watching all that percolate and grow and develop and all that, that's hugely satisfying for me. And then just getting the nice accolades from your customers. Alan and I and Chad, he's been our CFO since 2016. Al went into corporate development and again, Chad came from the oil and gas world, but his learning curve was huge and he's grown tremendously. But all three of us will be on the road and we're having a few, beers with our customers and to get accolades or, hey, you really helped us here. I really appreciate that. That's the best feeling in the world.
Most people or a lot of people will go to you for advice in the company and industry in general. But nowadays, is there anyone you go to for advice that you maybe look towards, or have you learned to kind of look in the mirror, so to speak?
I try to get involved in whether it's advocacy or some of these charity things. And the side benefit of that is you get to rub shoulders with a Mike Rose or Grant Fagerheim or even Rob Rowan from Athabasca. And again, you're having a coffee or a lunch or something like that, and you just talk, you're talking about world supply demand, you're talking about politics, you're talking about what's happening in Ottawa or new regulations. So the best part of my board is we put 7 pretty independent, diverse people on that board that at any given time I can phone them up or take them out for a coffee and get advice. So I would just say I just surround myself with a network of external people that I can get independent, maybe unbiased advice. And not that I always get unbiased, but sometimes you have to get out of your little world, take the blinders off and say, okay, what's happening outside of the secure world?
Right. Speaking of boards, it's kind of a balance between interacting with people who understand the industry and you can trust, so to speak, and finding people outside the industry to give you unbiased advice. Is it difficult to find that balance?
Absolutely. It's harder than you believe. And, we talk about when you're doing your recruitment for board members, there's certain boards that tick boxes and there's other boards like ours that really grill down to where do you come from? What's your experiences? What's your leadership style? What was it like for you as an executive or CEO or CFO or whatever that background is? And I think ultimately your best directors are ones that have that independent view, but have some sort of tie back to what you're trying to do or where you want to go and ultimately help get you. And sometimes that's operational. Sometimes that's financial. Sometimes that's environmental. Sometimes that's small companies. Sometimes that's big, so you're just looking in that the whole, different almost kaleidoscope of experiences and skills that ultimately get you that best board. And then to your point, you all got to trust each other. You can't have a board second guessing or spending 80% of their time in camera. Get it out on the table. And that's what I love about my board. Just get it out on the table. It's not, we don't need to talk about this for the next 6 months. Just get it on the table and hey, we'll try to make a decision.
This is going back. I missed it. Do you remember your first day in energy? First day in the field?
Yeah, that's, well, I remember my first day in Edmonton, going to that big head office, that had probably, back then they probably had about 15 floors and intimidating as hell. And this is a kid that came from Churchill, Manitoba and was fearless, but you go into that and you have your crooked tie and tip top tailor suit. And yeah, I remember that very distinctly, but there was a lot of, for some reason in that accounting department, there was a lot of people hired out of my college. And so I immediately knew there was 5 of us that got hired that year. So you had some immediate friends and immediate, something in common. And then my boss had come from Winnipeg as well. So by the end of the day, you're feeling pretty comfortable and saying, okay, I can fit in here and I can be part of the team here or whatnot. And of course, what you quickly find out is they've got a baseball team and a hockey team. And, we all got, that just creates that camaraderie and great culture. So I remember that. And then in terms of the field going up to Tuktoyaktuk, being from the north, I was grinning from ear to ear. I remember you'd fly into Inuvik, you'd take a Twin Otter up to Tuk Base, and so you're landing and there's a hard northwest wind coming in and the pilots would land on one wheel, if you can believe that, in a Twin Otter and just set it right down and there you go. And again, just you're on top of the world because you can see the Arctic Circle from there.
You are not the average accountant. Maybe like McDilger, you have led organizations and you are basically a business leader. How did you develop that diverse skill set? And were you always aware of the importance of not just being an accountant?
I think it goes back to, your childhood. Mom and dad didn't have much money. So I was always, had part-time jobs. And so I think those experiences, whether it's washing dishes or I remember one summer I worked in the Hudson Bay. I was helping the produce manager, and I'm only 15 years old, and he dislocates his shoulder, and they make me the produce manager at 15 years old. So, you just kind of take on that responsibility. Like, well, okay, you want me to run this thing? I'll run it. And so I think those experience gives you that confidence and maybe helps you with your early day learning skills. And believe me, it's taken me, I'm still learning today from when it comes to leadership skills. But I think those early experiences helped me. The diversity I had of all those different jobs at Imperial Oil kind of set you up so that when they say that, hey, do you want to start a company, and B, you want to be CEO, you're comfortable with that decision. You're not, you're certainly not thinking, geez, can I really do this? You kind of go into it with not too much confidence, but at least some self-confidence that, yeah, we can do this.
Advice to a young person starting out in energy or in business in general, what would you tell them?
Well, energy specific, you think about the hierarchy needs in the world, and I always go back to the lucky 1.4 billion people on Earth and the 6 billion that want what we have. We need hydrocarbons. We need more energy molecules, any way you slice it. And so this industry, this business, and how we diversify the energy sources, and maybe we're going to be part of that. Young people have a career for the next 30, 60, 90 years, who knows? But, I think right now what's playing out is we need secure energy. We need reliable energy, and two wars happening right now just show you how quickly that can be taken away from you. I always put myself in the shoes of, let's say, that person in Africa, which is the fastest growing continent. Right now, he's walking, but someday he wants to be able to afford a bicycle. And then someday he's going to have the money to get a motorcycle. And then it's going to be a small car. And he's not worried about going from small car combustion engine to electric. He's just thinking, I need a pickup so I can take my goods to the market. And so nobody's having that conversation. I mean, I'm going to be glued to COP28 because the United Arab Emirates is hosting, and he's talked about, let me get this straight. He says, you think this is controversial that I'm hosting? He says, let me get this straight. You developed countries went in and raped and pillaged these undeveloped countries, took all their resources, and now you're telling them that they don't get the resources? Or we're going to bypass the cheap energy and you have to go to the expensive energy. We need to have a conversation. And so, I think COP28 is going to be fascinating because it might be the very first time of any of those COP conferences where they're going to have an open and honest dialogue about what the world needs over the next 30 to 60 years. And so getting back to your question, anybody that's thinking about energy, this is probably as exciting as it's ever been. And then part two, if you're starting out today, the world is your oyster. I mean, we need more good people in this industry. We've collectively, we had 37 summer students last year. We're trying to get as many people exposed to this industry as we can in that second, third year of college, university, whatever they're doing. And when they get here, they go, holy shit, this is exciting.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it.
Okay.
I really appreciate your time, and I know a lot of listeners will also appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. If you liked what you heard, check out roadsbros.ca, where we will have upcoming shows. Until next time, happy coffee drinking.